Why was separation of powers crucial for new Latin American governments? Imagine waking up one day and finding your entire government structure changed overnight. When Latin American countries gained independence from Spain, that was exactly the challenge they faced. They needed a way to build governments that were legitimate and stable without the old monarchy. The answer was creating a system where power was divided among different branches. This idea is called separation of powers. It was a key step in forming new republics and shaping their future. Back in the colonial days, only the Spanish king held all the authority. He controlled the church, the military, and other powerful groups. When independence happened, leaders realized they couldn't just give all power to one person or institution. If they did, they risked recreating the authoritarian rule they fought so hard to escape. So, they designed governments where power was shared. The executive branch, like the president or governor, could make decisions but was kept in check by the legislative branch, which made laws, and the judicial branch, which interpreted those laws. This setup helped prevent any one part from becoming too powerful. Another reason separation of powers was vital involved the social makeup of Latin America. The new leaders, mostly Creoles, wanted to create governments that their diverse populations would accept. They knew that giving too much power to one branch could lead to tyranny or unfair rule. By sharing authority, they aimed to encourage participation and keep everyone's interests in mind. This was especially important because many regions had different needs and cultures, making a single, central authority less effective. Federalism also played a role. Many Latin American countries experimented with federal systems, which meant local regions had their own governments. To make federalism work, clear lines of authority were needed. Separation of powers provided that clarity. It defined what the central government could do and what local governments could handle. Without this division, federal systems could fall apart into chaos or become too centralized. The constitutions that Latin American leaders wrote reflected these ideas. Presidents were given powers to propose laws and run the country, but they had to work with legislatures and courts. This balance was different from the American model but aimed to serve Latin America's unique needs. Leaders often wanted stronger presidents to keep order, but they also knew that unchecked power could lead to dictatorship. So, they kept the separation of powers as a safeguard. In practice, though, things weren't always perfect. Some leaders pushed for more power, especially military rulers. They sometimes ignored constitutional limits or used force to stay in control. This tension between weak and strong executives was a constant challenge. Still, the idea of dividing power remained a foundation for Latin American governments. From a cultural point of view, separation of powers was also about balancing different values. Latin American societies inherited indigenous traditions of community decision-making, Spanish hierarchies, and Enlightenment ideas about rights. Combining these influences, leaders saw the need for a government that could be strong enough to build a nation but limited enough to prevent tyranny. Separation of powers helped strike that balance. It also helped manage relationships between civilians and the military, between the central government and regional authorities, and between secular and religious groups. These divisions often led to conflicts, but having clear boundaries made it easier to negotiate and adapt over time. Throughout the 19th century, different groups fought for influence, and the separation of powers provided a framework to manage those struggles. In the end, separation of powers was more than just a political idea. It was a practical tool for building stable, legitimate governments in a time of great change. It helped new Latin American nations move away from colonial control, prevent authoritarian rule, and manage regional differences. Even when imperfect, this system became a key part of how Latin American republics organized themselves as independent nations.